uncertain and confusing economic times, we know that real estate remains a powerful store of value. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Agro, who's the Associate Vice President of Equiton. And today we're talking real estate and how do we risk mitigate. And Kyle, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Patrick. Always a pleasure to be here.
So Kyle, let's talk real estate. You know, Equiton has been at it a long time, but give me some background, give our listeners, our viewers some background on Equiton, and then we're going to get into what it is from a global macro right into a micro, why real estate, why Equiton. Give us some history of Equiton.
Yeah, of course. We're still a fairly new company. We were started in 2015. Now, we were started by an individual. His name is Jason Rooke. He is still the president and CEO of Equiton today, and he's a developer by trade. So he worked for a land development company called Live Communities. That's L-I-V Communities. They're actually still in business today. Nothing handed to him. He worked his way up through the trenches of that company, actually ended up being the president and CEO of that company, but he had bigger ambitions and a different vision for what he wanted the company to be. So he ended up taking a payout back in 2015, and that's actually how he was able to start Equiton. Now, his right-hand woman in this case is Helen Hurlbut. She is our CFO, and she is a managerial accountant by trade. She worked in the development space herself for an extended period of time as well. One of the bigger companies that she worked for, she held the position of executive vice president for Matabee Homes, which is one of the biggest home builders in the whole country. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. And she was one of those people who helped make them into who they are today. Without those two at the top, we really wouldn't be who we are. Now, in the investment world, the legislation changed in certain parts of the country that actually allowed people to invest in this style of an investment. Now, private equity real estate was only available to accredited and institutional investors before 2015. So this was an opportunity that they saw where they could make real estate accessible to all Canadians, not just the rich getting richer, let's call it. And since then, that's been the mission for us moving forward, is just trying to educate as many Canadians as possible that there are different ways that you can invest in real estate, and just buying and managing properties yourself is not the be all and end all when it comes to investing into real estate.
I think there's something that we have to kind of shine a light on, and I think it's quite obvious, really, is that when we look at what's happening across the country, really North America, but let's talk about Canada, the challenges that do-it-yourself investors are facing, whether it be the economic conditions, the rising interest rates, and or the seemingly headwinds that we face in getting mortgages, the challenges that we face in finding inventory that cash flows, or if we're not really, I guess, have the level of expertise in taking some and doing some kind of development. So taking a single property, taking a single property and turning it into a multi, so it does in fact cash flow. These are the challenges that we face. So if you're a busy individual, you don't have the skill set, you can't face the headwinds called I got to get a mortgage, then this is really where Equiton shines, because we're able to invest our capital, put it to work into a store of value called real estate, and do it in a way that, number one, we don't have to jump through all those hoops. We can do it with far less money in. So for example, we're not having to put $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in as a down payment. And so that's really a big part of where Equiton fills a huge gap and accommodates their clients.
Yeah, that's really it. And going back to what I was saying before, we'll dig into it a little bit deeper, but Jason and Helen really wanted to make real estate accessible to all Canadians. And that's what we're able to do here. Because as you mentioned, with what's going on in the country specifically at this point, and housing affordability, the macroeconomic condition, even some of the geopolitical things that have happened that are pushing, making real estate more challenging to be able to get involved in, with doing it on an individual level. With what we do, just so everybody understands the structure of it, is really what we're doing is we're just pooling people's money together so we can buy really large real estate assets and everybody gets a partial ownership in it. So they get to take a piece of the pie. Specifically, the structure is we set up a mutual fund trust. The reason why we set it up as a mutual fund trust is because that allows us to take monies from people who aren't necessarily accredited, as I had mentioned, but it also allows people to use their registered monies. So things like RSPs, TFSAs, LIRAs, and in some cases RESPs, their children's education plan, which typically people aren't able to use those for real estate in general. So it opens the doors to a lot of different avenues on ways that people can invest into real estate, number one. What we do is we sell individual units of the trust to investors. And what that does is it gives them direct ownership in everything that that trust owns. How Equiton comes into play, we do not own it. We are just asset managers. So again, this opens another door for people who know that they want to invest in real estate, but they don't necessarily have the expertise. Because having somebody like an Equiton being the asset managers, we're the ones bringing everything from cradle to grave. We're the ones running due diligence on properties. We're the ones running financial forecasts. We're the ones dealing with tenants, lawyers, accountants, trades guys, like everything that it takes in order to run a really active real estate portfolio. So that's another way that dealing or working with somebody like an Equiton can give you real estate exposure without you having to come up with all of those things. With us, there are no down payments. There are no signing of mortgages. There's nothing of that nature. And for as low as $5,000, some of our funds, you could get real estate exposure and real estate ownership to Canadians. And again, these are some of the things that we're doing and that we pride ourselves on to keep real estate accessible to all Canadians, because we do know that real estate is a great investment. We do know that although there's a lot of headwinds in terms of owning it yourself, there's a lot of tailwinds that are happening that are pushing the real estate market forward and will continue to do that moving into the future.
I think it's interesting for me, that in this part of, or this phase of my life, if you will, I mean, I still own a lot of real estate in terms of the do-it-yourself model. I own, duplexes and multifamily and light industrial. But, when I actually invested with Equiton, what I really kind of most appreciated was the fact that it wasn't sticky. I was able to take some of my registered capital and put it to work. And in this case, I worked with you, which was awesome. And we were able to do that kind of without a whole lot of sweat and tears, if you will. Like, I didn't have to put my back into it, give you the information, look at all of the documents that you gave me, the pro formas and the kind of the back behind the scenes of what I was investing in, which you do with everybody, but then ultimately be able to put my capital to work and do it without a whole lot of, like I say, stress and strain. And I think for me, that was a really important part of expanding my portfolio, because I do, in fact, still believe so strongly in real estate as a store of value. To one of the points that you made is that when we look at what's happening in the world, we need to place our capital, without going off on a whole tangent. The last place I want my money is sitting in a bank doing whatever it can possibly do given this particular environment. I want to put it to work, and I still see real estate as that store of value. So Equiton has got a very strong track record. I mean, even given that in your world, it's kind of a short, it hasn't been around forever, 2015, got it. But you broke $1 billion of assets under management. You've got a track record. Why don't we unpack that a little bit and share with our viewers just some of the insights about what Equiton has accomplished and what you've achieved so far?
Yeah, and honestly, it goes right back up to Jason and Helen. Their expertise have pushed us to a pace that I didn't even think was possible. Mm-hmm. I've been a part of Equiton for the better part of 4 years at this point, and the amount of growth that we've seen since I've been here is astronomical. Actually, I'm an associate vice president for a capital raise department specifically. So all I do is I work with investors who are looking to invest with us. When I first started here, there was only 2 of us, me and my current boss. His name's Austin Rogers. And we were the only 2 raising capital. Now we have a team of 33 just on the capital raise team. And from the beginning, this was a little bit before I started, but again, they started with $20 million in assets under management back in 2015. You fast forward to today, we got $1.05 billion in assets under current management, Plus, we also do development projects. We have another $1.5 billion in completed value of developments that will all be done before the end of the decade. So with that type of growth, really, you have to be making the right decisions. You have to be prudent about what you're doing. You have to be conservative in nature, which one of the things we did in our apartment portfolio is we do 10-year fixed mortgages on our buildings. So if you look at the current rate environment, our average mortgage rate right now is just over 3%, 3.06%. Plus our average term to maturity on these buildings is almost 7 years. So being conservative and having the right people making the right decisions, really the growth speaks for itself, and we wouldn't be where we are today without that.
Well, I think we look at why we invest our capital, number one, we want to get great returns on that capital. In other words, we want to put it to work so that we actually, there's a phrase in real estate, which is we want our capital to work harder for us than we work for our capital, which means that we need to put it to work. And when we look at what Equiton is doing, there's a couple of components to all of this. Is that number one, we also want to risk mitigate. So when we're growing future wealth, we want to minimize risk. And when you're going and working with somebody like Equiton, that's part of what you guys offer because of just the depth, the quality of the team that you have, the assets that you're looking at, the research that you're doing. And so can you speak a little bit to maybe some historical results that you've got? And I know that you're probably going, we can't promise results, but ultimately you do have a track record. Do you want to share with some of the results in that, Kyle?
Yeah, of course. First things first, always do have to say that past performance isn't necessarily indicative of future performance. But with that being said, it can tell a story, right? And when we look at Equiton, we've had our flagship fund, the apartment fund, open for 96 months at this point. We've never had a negative month, let alone a negative year. And the reason why is, again, prudent management. It's being conservative. Really, when we have certain metrics we're looking for, but the number one goal that we have is don't lose money. What are we going to do so it won't lose money? Some investments you'll make a little bit more than others, but as long as you're making the right decisions and being conservative about it, then you have nothing but a good story to tell. One of our slogans here is it's better to underpromise and overdeliver than the other way around. And it makes my life a lot easier because during the course of my tenure here at Equiton, I've always had a good story to tell because of the work that they do on the back end. What they do makes me look good in the front, and what we do helps them be able to continually push their model into the future. But as I said, if we look at past performance, we have never, ever lost money for our investors in the tenure that we've had Equiton open.
At a time when real estate has become a controversial topic because of the economic headwinds, because of mortgage rates, because of the challenges that many investors are facing when they go to get a mortgage, it is shutting people down more and more. I see investors standing on the sidelines, sitting on the sidelines, whatever term you want to use, waiting for something to shift and to change. And I can't stress enough that I believe so strongly in real estate as a store of value. And this is I don't want to call it a path of least resistance, but I think it is a path to success investing in real estate, putting your capital to work. And listen, Equiton has the expertise. They make it easier. Kyle, as we wind this segment down, is there anything that you want to add that you want people to hear and to really recognize within what you're doing?
Really, it's just effective management skills. It's, again, when things are going in a certain direction and it's hard to navigate it on your own, you don't necessarily have to do it on your own. Having the right team in place is what's going to push your success in the future, whether you are looking at it from a passive aspect because you're a busy professional, or you just don't have the expertise, or you don't want to take on the risk that's associated with it, all the way to, if you're doing it actively, make sure that you have the right people on your team on that side as well.
Beautiful. Kyle, thanks for giving us those insights into what Equiton is up to. I'm excited about Equiton as a trusted partner of the Real Estate Investment Network. I'm excited about Equiton and their growth into the future. Thanks for taking the time to share some insights with us.
Of course, I love coming here. I love educating people as much as I can. So anytime you want me on, you just let me know. Okay, Patrick?
Beautiful. Thanks, Kyle.
Chris.